If you have a Mac with an unsupported macOS that inadvertently updated to macOS Tahoe and now it won't boot or you can't log in and get to your data anymore, there might be a way that I can show you to recover your data. Welcome to Jesse's Flying. macOS 26 Tahoe was released about 2 months ago, but there is still no new OpenCore legacy patcher version, most probably version 3.0.0, that enables macOS Tahoe on unsupported Macs. If you like to know more details, here's my video about that with all the backgrounds and all the info how far the development goes right now. But as macOS acquire always tries to activate those automatic updates again, it might happen that your unsupported Mac just automatically updated to macOS 26 Tahoe, even though OpenCore Legacy Patcher is not ready for that yet. And then it might even not boot, or you can't log in anymore and you can't get to your data anymore. And I have a lot of comments below my videos and a lot of discussions on my Discord server. By the way, we only need very few people to reach 4,000 members. So the link is down in the video description, and I would love to see you on my Discord server helping others or asking questions and getting helped. So like this old MacBook Pro 2016 where I tried macOS Tahoe, this boots because of a nightly build of a beta version of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher 3.0.0. But if you have a regular release version, that might be really difficult to get back to your data. And I have two ways actually how you can maybe get your Mac to boot macOS Tahoe and to let you log in to macOS Tahoe, even though there might be no Wi-Fi and no Bluetooth and no audio and no graphic acceleration, but it might be enough to plug in maybe an external hard drive or a USB thumb drive or whatever and get your data off that Mac, because you cannot downgrade a macOS. If you have a certain version on your Mac, or it's the same with your iPhone, with the Macs you only can wipe the hard disk and install a brand new older macOS version. But let's try to recover the data first, and I have two methods. The first one is a little bit easier because if you have another Mac, then you can prepare a USB thumb drive where you can boot the nightly build, the new version, the beta version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher 3.0.0 for your specific Mac, and then try to boot your Mac and enter your password so you get your data off that Mac. The other version, the second method, is for Windows users. If you don't have another Mac, I can show you how you can create that USB thumb drive with Windows, and you have the same result. You can plug this into your Mac and hopefully, maybe it's not guaranteed, but hopefully you can boot off that USB drive into Tahoe and get your data off your Mac. So let's start with the easy version if you have another Mac. So the first method is if you have another Mac available. Open up the search with Command Space and then search for the disk utility. And here you want to make sure that you select the USB thumb drive, especially if you have like other external hard drives, you don't want to delete them. So I just minimize all the others, select my USB thumb drive, check the size, like this one is 64 gigabytes, and make sure you have show all devices switched on. Then you click erase. You can call it whatever you like. I just called the USB drive rescue, and I select macOS extended journaled and GUID partition map. And with that GUID partition map, if you now erase the stick, obviously all data is lost, so make a backup before, then it creates two partitions, a EFI partition that we will need later and the regular data partition. We now can close the disk utility, and again we use the search for the terminal. and then we write DiskUtil list, which shows us all the hard drives, either the synthesized or the external physical or the internal physical drives. Again, check that you find your USB drive. For instance, these are like internal physical, external physical, but a 2 terabyte, that's my external hard drive. And then we have the disk 6, which is the external drive with 64 gigabytes. And there we have the EFI partition, which is about 200 megabytes. So remember that identifier. In my case, but yours might be different, it's disk 6S1. And then we write sudo for superuserdo DiskUtil mount disk 6S1 or whatever your disk is, enter my password, and then the EFI partition is mounted. If you now go into the Finder, you can see that there is the EFI partition, which is obviously empty. And now you choose from the repository, the link is down in the video description on my Google Drive. From the repository, you choose the appropriate folder, how your Mac is, what kind of Mac you got. So in my case, I have the MacBook Pro 13.3, and inside that folder, there are 2 folders, an EFI folder and a system folder. Just copy both of them to your EFI partition on that USB thumb drive. It's only about 30 megabytes, so that's not very large. And as soon as that is copied, it should look like this. The EFI partition has the EFI folder and the system folder. Now you can eject that USB thumb drive and try to boot from that USB drive on your Mac. If you only have a Windows PC, you need a tool, and that is called DiskGenius. It's a free version, and the link is down in the video description. So download that version and install it. Afterwards, you can see all your hard drives on the left side. And I just minimize all the others because I want to make sure I select the correct USB thumb drive. Make a right click and look for delete all partitions. If there are any partitions on it, just delete everything. On my USB drive, there are none, so we can just click on the top corner, create ESP or MSR partition. And MSR is a Microsoft partition. We can just uncheck this and just keep the check mark, create ESP partition. That's a EFI system partition. And then we create another regular partition and we align it after the others. That is what this third check mark means. It's just a regular primary partition. You can choose FAT32 or exFAT, whatever, and it will be this aligned to integral of the sectors, means it will just add it at the end of the EFI partition. Call it whatever you like. I just call it rescue, and then it's all set up, but nothing happened yet. You have to click in the top left corner, save all. And then it will do all the changes you did, like deleting partitions and creating partitions to that USB thumb drive. As you can see now, there are 2 partitions created, and we need to copy now the files that you can download out of my repository from Google Drive that match your Mac model. For instance, in my case, it's a MacBook Pro 13.3. Just go into that folder, and there are 2 folders in that folder. That's called EFI and System. And just open up the Finder, go to that folder and drag those 2 folders into the ESP partition. It asks if you want to copy it, and it say yes. Just hit OK, and then those 2 folders are copied to the EFI partition of that USB thumb drive. And it's just about 30 megabytes, so it will just take a while depending on the speed of your thumb drive. But just make sure on the left side that you've double clicked and selected the ESP partition, not the rescue partition. If you see the rescue partition just have the system volume information, but if you double click on USB, it says EFI and system. And now you can eject that USB thumb drive, plug it into your Mac, and we're going to try to boot from there. So what did you just copy onto your USB drive, those two folders, EFI and system? I used the nightly build of OpenCore Legacy Patcher 3.0.0. That is the work in progress version towards macOS 26 Tahoe, to recreate the EFI folder of all unsupported Mac models that the OpenCore Legacy Patcher supported. That is 85 different Mac models that are all the folders that you can see up here on the screen, because there are already some improvements against the latest official version 2.4.1 that you might have on your Mac that doesn't boot anymore. Most of you, where I can read the comments, they say, okay, my Mac still boots, but I cannot type in any password. I cannot log in anymore. That might be most probably due to the USB mapping. And that is more or less fixed already in that nightly build. I tested that on 3 of my unsupported Macs and it worked. Where they didn't boot with macOS Tahoe with OpenCore Legacy Patcher 2.4.1, they did boot with the nightly build version of 3.0.0. How do you boot from there right now? So if you plug that USB drive into your Mac, you need to tell the Mac to boot from there. So if you switch it on, keep the Option key or Alt key pressed. Maybe press it often, and if you have a USB keyboard, use a USB keyboard and not a Bluetooth version. You might need to do that several times until you reach the Apple boot selector, and that looks like this. I keep the Option key pressed and switch it on, and then you hear the chime, and then you need to see this screen where it says choose network at the bottom, and there is no version number in the lower right corner. That is the Apple boot selector. And if you have the USB drive in it, there should be a USB boot logo. As you could see, it took a while to notice the USB thumb drive. So it should be that yellow icon that you can see here that says EFI boot. The blue icon with the OpenCore Legacy Patcher, that is the OpenCore Legacy Patcher, most probably 2.4.1 that is installed on your hard disk. That won't work. Choose the yellow one. Then hit return, and now you see the OpenCore boot selector. That is the one that has the versioning number in the lower right corner, that has those reset and shutdown buttons down here and no network selection. And now obviously this is OpenCore Legacy Patcher nightly build 3.0.0. You choose your hard disk, whatever name there is. Mine is Macintosh HD. And then it starts Tahoe, but with the OpenCore Legacy Patcher version from that USB thumb drive, the nightly build 3.0.0. It might take a while, give it some time, and there are times where that progress bar is just stuck and it takes maybe 30 seconds. Sometimes the mouse driver pops up and then you can see that flickering on the screen. That's because of the missing graphic drivers. But I can enter my password and I hopefully can just boot into Tahoe. On my Mac obviously it works because I have that already installed. But now hopefully you are able to plug in your external drive or just use that thumb drive to get your data off that Mac. And then here on my video you can see all the commands like Command R, Command Shift R and so on, how you can do a recovery of your Mac into the latest officially supported macOS. Or if you have another Mac, you can create a thumb drive with an OpenCore Legacy Patcher installer for Sequoia or whatever. If you need help for that, here is my ultimate tutorial about that, how to make a fresh install on that Mac. You cannot downgrade. Just go into the setup, wipe the hard disk and start from scratch. But hopefully this USB thumb drive you just created helps you get your important data off your unsupported Mac. And make sure that you switch off all automatic updates, and especially macOS Sequoia always tries to reactivate the automatic updates. Make sure after every update you did manually, because you switched off the automatic updates, to check if the automatic updates are off again, until you see a thumbs up here on my channel that the new version of macOS Sequoia is safe for your OpenCore Legacy Patcher version, if there's a new one, or if there is finally a version for macOS 26 Tahoe. But then there will be some videos about that here on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe, click the bell for notification, join my Discord community. We're just missing a very few members to hit the 4,000 member mark. And then thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.